Let's talk about those market movements now with David Shapiro, who is from Sasfin Securities. David, as always, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. I mean, the JSE had some positive moves during early afternoon trade, and now it had a marginal close of 0.02% in the red. Earlier on, it was being boosted by the likes of your industrials. What would you say were some of the movements that caused it to end the way that it did today?
It seems to be on the resource side. There seems to be quite a bit of profit taking now. It's hard to read. Look, we've had very good run in the oil price. Other metals have also had pretty good runs. Aluminium prices, zinc price, and so on. Platinum prices have stable. Today I think the palladium price was up, but I think it's just a little stretched and tired, those markets. And we've seen some profit taking. You've seen Sasol come down from the 300 mark back to where it is now. I think about 270 or slightly lower than that. So that's the kind of movement we're seeing. But I wouldn't be concerned. Rafiba, the good news, and this is really good news, is that we've actually seen Tencent and Alibaba and Chinese tech companies turning around. It hasn't gone pronounced. There's been no fanfare, but they're starting to turn up. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see buyers coming in for those, which is going to give our two favorite stocks, Prosus and Naspers, a bit of a lift. So just watch that space. Things are looking slightly better than we've anticipated now. Pressure off there. So that's the good news for the markets at the moment.
Very good news indeed. And I want to keep it in Asia since you've mentioned stocks that are listed in China. The IMF coming up with the growth forecast for Asia, downgrading that growth outlook despite the fact that it still be one of the biggest growing regions in the world. I don't know, does this bring about a little bit of concern around consumptions? They are some of the biggest consumers of soft and hard commodities. Your thoughts on that?
Look, I reckon it's temporary, or it might not be that temporary, but I think it'll blow over. I think the big issue is the energy crisis that we're seeing in China, where there's forced closure or reduction in production of the major factories. So we've seen issues there, which is going to cause a bit of a slowdown in China. Look, once we're over the winter, I think things will start to pick up. But I mean, it is a bit of a concern. The other thing is supply chain issues, because they can't get the goods out, or perhaps they can't get into markets. There's also issues with that. So, but I think those are temporary issues. I think they'll correct themselves probably in the new year. And this is all issues that have arisen from, coming out of the pandemic. And to a large extent, a lot of the demand, a lot is that we've seen excess demand, which suppliers can't keep up with. But I wouldn't be too concerned with it. I think these things will play themselves out or just work themselves out of the system. But it is China that is causing those concerns.
Right. I mentioned earlier that U.S. earnings had a little bit of a positive sentiment on global markets today. I mean, you had the likes of Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, both beating expectations. And then we're going to have tech stocks coming up with earnings, the likes of Netflix. It's a really good time for the S&P as well as the NASDAQ.
Yeah. But if you listen to analysts and commentators, they're negative. They're still looking at that wall of worry, stagflation, inflation, credit issues, and so on. But I mean, if you listen to the CEOs, they ultra bullish. I mean, I was listening to J&J and the CFO, the financial, he's extremely positive about the pipeline for drugs and sees demand for these special drugs going right through to the end of the decade. So he sees his profits up. If you listen to the bank profits or the bank CEOs, they were also very positive about where the U.S. economy is. So you're getting the conflict, the analysts, strategists, all concerned about the worries, but companies just seem to do exceptionally well. I think we're going to get really good results coming out of the tech businesses. So I'm bullish on the market, and I think we're going to test the new the highs that we saw early in September. So I wouldn't be surprised if by early November or late October, we're in record territory again in the S&P. And of course, that brushes through to global markets.
Of course, investors gaining a lot of rewards from Netflix in the US, and the rest of us here having to fork out more for our accounts as announced by Netflix earlier on today. David, as always, thank you for your time this afternoon. That's the Deputy Chairman of Sasfin Securities, breaking down the market movements for today.